So in general, for a tax credit transfer, you may review somewhere between 30 to 50 documents per project. If it's a larger project, it's more. If it's small, it's a little bit less. And sometimes it could be a little bit less. It could be like 15, 20 for like some small CNI projects. So now wearing the DG hat is, if you have the scale, then you have too many projects. So then you're multiplying 30 times 50 assets, you're reviewing 50,000 documents. So that's a nightmare, and that's what we're experiencing. Or you have two assets, but now you don't have the scale, so it's not worth paying a law firm, it's not worth spending too much time, and it might not be worth investors' time. So you either have too many projects, or it's too small, and in both situations, spending too much time reviewing documents is a pain point. It's already a pain point in utility scale, that for DG, it's even more so, and that's one of the reasons, right? Like it's a DG-focused platform that this became paramount to be efficient.
All right, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who attended our summer solstice fundraiser that we had on June 4th, in Jersey City, New Jersey, benefiting Let's Share the Sun. I would also like to thank our sponsors, Concentro, Folio, New Energy Equity, Soul Harvest, and Kinetic Communities. Thank you to our partners, Let's Share the Sun, Positive Deviancy, Jordan Energy, the Solar Sisters, Renewable Energy, and the Solar Maverick Podcast. I also want to recognize Sunlight General, Hub International, Rosemore Capital, and cleantech industry resources for their additional donations. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Inigo, co-founder and CEO of Concentro and Folio. Concentro is active in the cleantech tax credit market, and Folio is using AI to help clean energy companies streamline diligence, financing, and asset management. In this episode, we talk about Inigo's clean energy journey, the growth of Concentro's tax credit transferability, the creation of Folio, and how AI can make project finance faster and more scalable. I also want to thank Inigo and the Folio team for sponsoring the Summer Solstice fundraiser. I'm grateful for their support. This was a great conversation about entrepreneurship, AI, project finance, tax credit, transferability, and the future of clean energy. Let's get into it.
Hi, this is Benoy Thanjan, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast. I'm really excited to have Inigo. He's the founder and CEO of Concentro. And also we're going to be talking about a new company within Concentro called Folio. And I've known Inigo, it's amazing now that, I know we were just talking about this. Maybe it's been 3 years that I know you're 3.5 years when you really first started Concentro. And then I met him at an Aurora Solar event. And then, I was working in the same office as him and Tao. So it's just amazing to see like the growth of the company and the growth of you guys as well. And, their first podcast interview we did November of 2024, I think.
Could be, yeah, that sounds about right.
Or when we actually recorded it, I think we actually released it on December 2024. I think we were the next month we released it. So it's amazing to see the growth. The Solar Maverick Podcast is about solar and entrepreneurship. Welcome back to the podcast. We're at their beautiful offices here in downtown New York, 115 Broadway. Thank you for coming back on. And I think to start off, it would be great to tell everyone like your clean energy journey, about Concentro, and then obviously what you're doing now with Folio as well.
Yeah, Benoy, I appreciate it a lot. It's great to be back. As Benoy mentioned, we met 3 years ago at an event. We stayed in touch. We're working the same office. We've been a usual suspect at his Let's Share the Sun solstice events. But yeah, thank you so much. And just for the audience, just to give the context, I'm Inigo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Concentro. Benoy also mentioned my co-founder, Tao, who's joined us in the last podcast, not in this one. But yeah, like just sharing a little bit more about first Concentro. Concentro is basically a tax credit platform broker, however you want to slice it and dice it. And we primarily help IPPs, developers, sponsors, or just in general, clean energy project owners transfer the tax credits that they receive to a third party for cash. I think probably today everyone's very familiar with transferability. Or think from the other side, we help corporations access fully vetted tax credits. We are more of a hands-on solution, and I think that will probably be a good segue to how Folio came to life. But we take care of absolutely everything from diligence to transaction management to legal documentation. Sometimes we also help procure tax insurance. And we also focus on mid-sized deals and on a lot of DG. I would say DG is roughly 80% of our activity at Concentro. But that's mostly Concentro. And then we recently, as Benoy was explaining, we recently spun off a product called Folio, which is an AI diligence software solution for IPPs, developers, and investors, depending on the hat that you're wearing. And I'm pretty sure we'll get more in the details, but it just helps people process documentation faster, have their house in order, the daily precise, and also brings all of the necessary tools for a diligence process, asset management, and so on and so forth. So the goal is that it becomes the operating software, if you will, for private finance teams. And I think we'll talk about the journey broadly, but it came as a spin-off of the work that we're doing. And it was a tool that we first built internally for us to do things more efficiently. And then it's kind of our concept asking, can we use this? This looks interesting. And then at the end of the day, we ended up carving out a fully configurable standalone software solution that was independent of our tax credit business, right? And it can serve multiple purposes and all financial products. But I sort of skipped part of your question, which was like my journey. But
but that's actually important. Obviously, what Concentro is, Folio, like we appreciate your support for the summer solstice to benefit Let's Share the Sun. Hopefully, we could get the Concentro team to do a team building activity with Let's Share the Sun in Puerto Rico.
That's what we're planning. And now, look, I have kids, so like sometimes that complicates things.
No, sure.
Like the work that Bill and team are doing in Puerto Rico is just amazing, and we hear it from all sources. And it's great to follow their journey, support them, and hopefully our next offsite might be there. And yeah, I think also some of our engineers will probably benefit from seeing an actual project and collect the panels.
Yeah, definitely. And people have brought kids to the event. Obviously, like they were older to be able to participate in the construction, but that would be, great. Obviously, making one of the trips. And I think it would be great team building and great networking too, if you go to some of the ones, because there are large, developers and IPPs are attending. But yeah, if you could talk about like your clean energy journey, how you and Tal met, what gave you the idea first to start Concentro? And then it's interesting to me about Folio because you essentially are probably the best of due diligencing projects, right? Because people are using your platform, and how that kind of happened where you thought, hey, this is actually something, like obviously you gave me a demo of the product, so I have an idea. And then, was the clients just like telling you that, or were you like, hey, we have this product? Like, when was the moment you thought, hey, this could be like another business? I think that's the first question is like, when did you actually think it could be like another business line or really add value? And then your unique perspective too, right?
So I think maybe I'll start with the journey because some of the things will make sense. And it sort of always was part of the vision, bringing technology to make financing simpler. But it was always unclear how, right? Like, are you using software? Are you using technology to do things more efficiently? And I think we're doing sort of both. But the part of the software, it wasn't something that we specifically pushed. It was more like conversations we had with our clients. And then they asked us, like, hey, it would be great to see. And then we showed it to them. Actually, it was pretty bare bones. And people are like, actually, this could be pretty exciting. And then, long story short, we entered a design partnership with one of our main clients. And it's been great. And we co-developed the platform. But I'll go back in time. So I'm an electromechanical engineer by training. My school was very heavy on energy. So I've always been very interested in both. I actually started my career in the startup world. I was the first employee in a startup studio, which meant I got to see the 0 to 1 of the studio itself. And then I also was part of the founding team of 2 different startups. None of it clean energy related, but a lot of entrepreneurship learnings and things that I brought later on in my career. Then after that, I went to McKinsey, where I was a management consultant for a good amount of years, and that's where I specialized on energy. And actually in Spain, for the audience that were originally Spanish, I was working in Spain and had a massive policy change that primarily changed the unit economics of PG assets. So we were engaged by one of the biggest utilities to help them launch their DG platform that ended up being a standalone unit. So we were on the trenches. I was on the trenches for like almost 10 months, helping building and navigate regulation, developing financial products to be offered to both B2B and B2C clients. And that gave me a lot of insights on things that could be done. And then I stayed pretty close to the energy practice. And then I came to the business school to the US, where I met my co-founder, Pal. We both went to Harvard for our MBA. And we spent our last year exploring some of the hypotheses. He also worked in the energy space. And we spent a lot of time working on some of the hypotheses we had all around financing clean energy projects this complex, right? And the question was like, what's the best way to solve it? But instead of like coming with an idea, we spent multiple months just talking to people, trying to understand their problems and how we could help them. And diligence was a very common item. So was permitting, but we thought we had like less of an edge over there. And then the IRA was passed. So all our conversations became about transferability and how this was going to be so much better than tax equity and so on and so forth. And just long story short, we decided that that was the perfect first problem to solve, to start learning on how can we help the industry be more efficient, right? Without being married to the solution, like, hey, maybe we just do a few transactions, learn, and then do something else that's more important for our clients. It turned out to be, it was a big problem to solve. And we've, I think, built a decent company out of it, which is Concentro. But then we experienced firsthand, and it's more or less what you were saying, all of the pains around doing diligence, right? And in the thesis when we started the company was like that technology could play a major role. And then we first had the IRA and then the whole Gen AI wave. And then it became pretty clear that it was a prime use case to use AI to make things more efficient rather than, hey, we're using AI for the sake of using AI.
Yeah, definitely.
And every startup wants to use AI. And so we started playing with some tools to cut time where we were spending most of it, right? Which was like processing documentation, making sure that the data that we're putting in term sheets, TCTAs, that some of our clients were using models and things like that was precise, and just organizing bare rules, which unfortunately it's very common that they're messy and like things are not standardized. So our V1 of what Folio is today, it was just an AI classifier plus extractor where you would throw a data room and then it would classify documents. And only for the 5-6 documents that were most painful, we had already like the logic to extract the key information that we wanted. And that was like V1. And that already started like saving us a lot of time. So we realized like, oh wow, but like here, there might be something. And then that came up in a couple of conversations with clients. And that was like what some of our clients saw initially, and they got excited. And we started thinking, look, there might be more to this than what we're initially envisioning. So we went from like 5-6 documents to 20 was V2. And then as of today, we have like 195 documents that can be extracted. But then we didn't stay there, right? Because that's some sort of like the smart data room solutions. So we kept building. So then we brought our checklist that before we're doing in Excel files, and we started connecting the documents. Then we created a CRM that before we were doing both in Hacksport and Airtable. And now we're like, hey, let's bring the CRM here. And now you can actually cross-check against the sources. And then we do memorandums. So it's like, without going through the laundry list, we started building all the things. And at this point, we were also building for some of our clients that were using the platform on the side, right? To make sure it was not overfitted for our use case. And that was sort of the moment. It's been a very long story to get here, but it's like, I think it was summer last year when we realized, okay, this has legs. Some of these people are excited. And we just kept a very small group of people that were using the platform or were co-building it. and then officially launched the new product earlier this year.
Yeah. And then when did you start incorporating like AI in Folio?
So honestly, from the get-go, right? So I think the first versions of what Folio is today was AI incorporated into our transaction management platform in early last year. And then I think the summer was when we started going full-fledged and like building all of these documents. We started with 4, and maybe by August we already had like 20, 30, and by the end of the year we had like 180, 90. So I think we started bringing AI pretty early. Maybe AI, as everyone conceives it, like some sort of like Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT equivalent we had early on, but it was earlier this year when we spent a lot of time calibrating it, making sure it was very precise, that it was fast. And also, I think it was a nice time with what it also explored, and things started being really, really precise and reliable, and not some sort of like full-fledged platform.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. Like, why are data rooms and document management, especially when you're due diligencing these projects, such a pain point?
So probably all of our audience will know the answer to this, but maybe, and I also put it from the perspective of DG projects, but for any given project, and at least that was our experience, and I think if you ask most IDP developers out there, 80% of the time is spent going through documentation and processing it and making sure you don't have the wrong data once in your ABC agreement, you don't have wrong information, then preparing your diligence package and getting ready for a lender, for a first year construction financier, which potential might be your perm lender and maybe your tax equity investor, and then ensuring everything's tight. You spend so much time doing that, then you spend so much time pulling the information out of those documents to make sure your models are correct and you have the right escalator and the right X, Y, and Z. And for us, so that's if you're wearing the IPP hat. If you're wearing the investor hat, then you receive all of that, and it can be organized in a way that you don't like it. You don't know what the information, you're trying to find what's wrong. So most of the time was spent there, right? And that's for any project. So in general, for a tax credit transfer, you may review somewhere between 30 to 50 documents per project. If it's a larger project, it's more. If it's a small project, it's a little bit less. And sometimes it could be a little bit less. It could be like 15, 20 for like some small CNI projects. So now wearing the DG hat is, if you have the scale, then you have too many projects. So then you're multiplying 30 times 50 assets, you're reviewing 50 documents. So that's a nightmare, and that's what we're experiencing. Or you have 2 assets, but now you don't have the scale, so it's not worth paying a law firm, it's not worth spending too much time, and it might not be worth investors' time. So you either have too many projects, or it's too small, and in both situations, spending too much time reviewing documents is a pain point. It's already a pain point in utility scale that for DG, it's even more so, and that's one of the reasons, right? Like I say, DG-focused platform that this became paramount to be efficient.
Mm-hmm. That's a great explanation about like efficiency, essentially, and then taking out a lot of costs related to the due diligence of the transaction. And then, really, if you have like small projects at 200, 250 kilowatts versus a 20 or 50, 100 megawatt portfolio, it's the same amount of work, right? So
yeah, I think that the joke we always make is that complexity scales with projects, not with dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit oversimplified, but I'm pretty sure our audience will get that joke.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And then what gave you the confidence really to say, hey, this is like a good standalone product? Like you mentioned customers, it sounded like customers had a need. You had the platform that you were using, a Folio internally, and then essentially, so you gave customers to use the platform, right? Kind of demo the platform. You were getting positive feedback, right, from it. And then you're like, hey, let's see, create a separate product. I'm assuming there's like a subscription related to using the product. Is that correct? Or
that's correct. So I'll start with the first part of the question. And I think first it was for us, right? Like, and I think one of the things that gives us an edge, and I'm not going to talk about like other solutions that are there, but like something that we're excited about is we're the core user, right? Like we're not software people trying to find out what do our clients want and like how do you diligence this and like doing customer discovery. Is like we build it for ourselves. We could also even like we could have stopped there and just become like the best people at doing deals because we are very efficient on the back end. So I think that was already exciting seeing how much time we're saving in deals. And I'll say not only time, precision, right? Like I think one of the key things here is not only about cost saving and spending 10 times less time in deals, it's also about how can you ensure you're more precise in running these deals because problems can be very costly in this industry. So I think that was like step one of, okay, like we're very excited about this and like this could have legs and everything. And then once you show that to your clients because they ask you and they're really excited, the initial feedback was really, really good. That's when we got really excited, right? And especially when I think about what we showed them back then and what we have today, I'm like, oh wow, like that was not a great product yet. And I think that was the moment it clicked. And of course, not giving names or anything, but like we even demoed with some of the bigger banks and 10 people would join the calls. And that's when you're onto something, right? Like, like this is exciting. And then, and probably the audience will know, like, then there's so many things as an IPP, as an investor, as a lender, that it's like, we're too busy or like, we're not busy, so we cannot use it. So like, then there's a little bit more friction, like from like, hey, this is super good to like, hey, we're going to sign up and pay for this and don't worry and spend time. And maybe that's like the G, as they call it, like the go-to-market or like GTM of startups. But I think that was the point that we realized, okay, this is very exciting, right? And then especially as the platform keeps improving, like Liz, our head of cleantech finance today, we give a shout out to the engineers again, because we're working right now on, I think it's like 13 deals at the same time, and we're 3 people on the deal team.
Oh,
and amazing. She's like, thank you guys, because like it is really like we've gone really far and like how efficient we are. So that's like that's a good thing that we keep we keep reminding ourselves of like this is exciting by using the platform. Answering the last part of the question, yes, this is a subscription. So we charge on a per seat basis. We don't charge usage or anything because we don't want to limit people from using it. And we always joke that we would rather lose money with a client now because they're using the platform too much than restricting usage and then people sign off because like, they couldn't upload 5 more documents or like the number of projects were too many. So we charge it per seat. Right now, we also are limiting the maximum number of seats in terms that we charge. And then from then on, you can have as many. And we are offering 2 months free for our clients to people that have worked with us in the past to test it out and to make sure that it's not something that they cannot test before they're paying, and we tailor it to them. But that's probably something I would be more than happy to extend to the Solar Maverick.
That's awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I guess we'll have like that in the notes and how you could contact you guys about. I'm assuming everyone usually prefers to do a demo first, right? Before, they do a per se.
Exactly. So more or less the flow of how people board is first there's one demo, and typically that's going to be the project finance team or like who would be the core user. And then they get excited, and then it will be a broader demo with the rest of the team, and people chip in. Sometimes IT comes, sometimes legal. And then at that point they say, okay, we want to do the trial, right? Like that's the benefit. Like, hey, now you can use this in a real deal. The platform is fully configurable, which means you could do M&A, you could do lending, you could do anything they would want in any technologies. So
it's any energy technology.
Any energy. I mean, we always make the joke you could also underwrite a dentist shop if you wanted to. But like, of course, it wouldn't be as well tailored as for the energy. But the idea is you can configure which variables you want to use within the platform. You can configure your dashboards, your tables, the documents you use, the information you want extracted from the documents, your checklist. And it's not like, hey, you have to decide one. You can also templatize it, right? So you could have your M&A set up. You could have your lending set up for solar and battery storage for both. And what we do is in this trial, our client said, hey, this is what I do. This is my checklist. These are the documents in general that I have. These are the environments I like to work with. And sometimes we help them craft that. And we fully set up the account for them. And then they have 2 months to try that out. And then at the end of those months, decide like, hey, do we want to move forward or not?
Yeah. And then have you noticed more brand loyalty because of you offering Folio to your existing customer base to the Concentro tax equity brokering platform?
I think so. I mean, it's also early in the sense like we're trying to keep, although now we're opening the floodgates a little bit more, but so far we've tried to keep the user base of Folio pretty much contained to make sure like we can deliver like great customer support, and we're building a lot of features for our clients. So it's not like we have 100 clients by design, but it creates a lot of positive feedback cycles, both sides, right? Like people that do a deal now can use Folio. They transact with us on Concentro. They're using Folio for the deal and they can see all of the benefits.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But also if you're using Folio, you're also talking with us. We're helping you do stuff. And then like it's very easy to do a tax credit transfer. And as we grow as the company, the idea is also to layer our execution and capital sourcing or project financing capabilities over Folio. So the answer is yes, that like it has a lot of positive feedback cycles in between Folio and more loyalties.
Yeah. And so do you require, once you are using the Concentro platform, to basically use Folio for the data room?
So we don't require it from the simple reason, and this is the way we operate across the whole business, is we only want people to do things because it's adding value to them, right? Like we want people to do a deal and use Folio just because it's just, they're going to give us the documents and we're going to use Folio for the diligence. So they get access. And once they get access, they can see the platform. If that's helpful for them to track certain things, fantastic, which in general is. But look, if they don't need to keep track of that, and especially think about the buyer, typically a corporate tax director or their law firm, sometimes they have their own processes. So you don't want to force a new process upon them. Then now we're seeing Folio be more and more useful for those deals.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great to explain that. And then, like, what are the major sort of, you mentioned, like, obviously time efficiency, right? Which is a huge save. What are the other benefits of using your Folio? Like, basically, it's an AI-enabled, data room for any energy assets, right? For, sounds like any type of financing transaction as well.
Exactly. So I'll frame it first from like what are the benefits across the board, and then I'll give the audience a few examples of how this is being used, which maybe is something I haven't done so far. But I think the key benefits is, one, you do things faster. And in the AI world, people say 10x faster, right? But I think it's probably sort of true or close to true in terms of like, you organize, process, and extract information 10 times faster from documents. And that for us is the difference between getting a diligence memorandum in a couple of days versus in 2-3 weeks with the team that we have. But the other thing is more precise, right? And I think that's as important in terms of like, you could be, and let's assume, I'm going to use a very basic variable, but let's assume that capacity is key for a model or for something. You can pull up capacity and see what all the documents in your data room say about capacity, right? So now you can make sure two things. One, that you have the right capacity number, but also that you can track which documents have the wrong capacity, right? And sometimes now if I'm wearing the IPP hat or the developer hat, it's not unheard of that your EPC agreement has something wrong and something else has something wrong. So then you can fix all of that before getting in front of a lender. And then there's something about like simplicity and standardization of like just using the same place for everything. I've talked a lot about document extraction, but like document processing, but you also have the checklist, and the checklist connected to the VDR. We have a document studio where you can work on your memo and your CIN. Some people use it as like a white document where you can like collaborate with team members, tag them, and so on. You can generate documents from scratch with AI. Instead of using Claude or GPT, you can use a Copilot there, which uses Claude and GPT, and is as powerful, but has all of your information. And then you have a CRM, ERP, where you have all of your projects, portfolios, all the data points that brings everything in the same place. Now, that is efficiency, speed, precision, and standardization. But now think about what the use cases are. Is if you're an IPP, you can use this, or a developer, you can use this to get ready for a financing process. So this could be from selling your assets to getting a loan, construction financing, permit financing, to getting sourcing tax equity, to sourcing a tax credit buyer, and so on and so forth. But it could also be where an investor had diligence in someone else's opportunity. Sometimes that's an IPP that is buying a project from a developer and you're on the other side, but we're also beginning to work with some lenders. We're beginning to work with some tax equity syndicators. And the idea is that this could be very helpful for the investors. And there's a very recent use case that we maybe didn't think too much in the beginning about, but it's sort of the asset management aspect, right? And we keep building more capabilities, but you imagine you're an IPP, you use Folio, you prepare all your data, your checklist, you make sure your diligence package is pitch perfect, you poke holes, and then you get in front of a lender and they're going to be really happy about what they see. You get financed, and then 6 months afterwards, you need to report. And they ask you a few things. And back in the day, you would have to go back to the data row, so who had the document, go to the lease agreement, look for X data point, and you lose a lot of time doing that. And sometimes you didn't get to the right data point, or why do you use X, Y, and Z in the model, and et cetera, et cetera. And now with Folio, you can go back and find that immediately, right? And this is something that especially one of our clients keeps saying, you need to make that case to future prospects, because it's one of the most helpful things for them.
Yeah, I know this because I've looked through so many, documents once you own the asset, and then you have to go back to the agreement to remember. So, that's huge, where you could just essentially it's searchable, right? Then having to manually go through the document.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting. What is you see the future of Folio? You kind of mentioned how you see it going to, it's doing some asset management functions post deal when the project's operational. What other uses in the future do you see?
So the ideal would be to that Folio become sort of the operating and corporate finance teams, even development teams as well. And you bring the whole value chain on the platform. I think now is very financing deal focused, and maybe with a little bit of asset management. So that means incorporating more around covenant tracking, performance tracking, and things like that, or earlier stage development, origination capabilities. That would be the goal, right? That is the single software solution that our clients use to do all of that. But then when you think of that in conjunction with our Concentro business, Concentro is what brings the execution capabilities. And sometimes that's very helpful to have hand in hand, right? Because a lot of our clients will be using a Folio, but then they also need to find a lender, and then maybe they don't have the right connections for that. And that's where we potentially step in, right? As of today, the core of what we do in Concentro is tax credit buyer sourcing, but we're beginning to work with other financial products. And the idea is that down the line is sort of a one-stop solution, right? You're using Folio to do everything, but then you can also tap into Concentro that will be layered in to source debt, maybe source, a buyer for your project, for your credits, et cetera, et cetera. And that's ultimately the end goal as a company.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting to understand. And then too, you might work with smaller companies maybe that are not financially sophisticated. Do you think Folio helps with that process, because it's almost like a guideline or template?
I think 100%, right? And some of our clients have used it for that purpose, and without announcing this too much, we sometimes help, as part of the Folio onboarding, we help our clients with advisory and diligence and everything. It's not just, hey, here you have Folio, test it out. We got you through the usage, we'll make sure you're in good shape. And that's also very helpful to make sure they're using the platform the right way. But aside from that, and just trying to answer the question directly, that's one of the main use cases, right? Because you can build an industry and standard checklist for the financing or construction financing to be more specific, and then what you have to go. And then you have automatic AI assessments for each checklist item. You know which documents you have to bring to the table. You can find gaps in those documents. You can more or less keep an organized process, which is sometimes a problem that like some smaller developers lack, which doesn't mean that like the key use case for Folio is someone that maybe smaller or less sophisticated or have less resources. It's also for the larger platforms, this is very helpful because sometimes you have multiple team members working on a deal, some people own different parts. There's not a place where you can have full visibility over the data or the documents and everything. So it serves both use cases pretty nicely. But I would say prime use case for someone that like maybe doesn't know exactly what they should bring in front of a lender or in front of a tax credit buyer or tax equity investor.
Yeah, definitely. That's really helpful to understand. I guess that goes into like, what's the long-term vision for Folio?
Yeah, I think it's that, right? Like you have hopefully the whole industry using the platform. I mean, that's a pretty tall order, but it's just that it becomes the operating system for project finance teams, and who knows how much more you expand that, and then it goes from early stage development all the way down to like asset management and operation and financial reporting. So right now we're more focused around like the financing process and a little bit after that. Mm-hmm. But the goal is that you do all of that, and then of course that you layer these like execution capabilities, and you can help also your clients source capital. And I mean, at the end of the day, and this is why we started with Concentro before Folio, is like the hair on fire problem is not do you have the house in order, is do you get finance. Now having the house in order is necessary to get finance, but like maybe you can help them get finance first and you help them get the house in order through your internal platform, which is what we're doing now. Now we're giving them the tools to have the house in order, but we can still help them get finance as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is there any other products that you're coming up with on Concentro that you would, so outside of Folio?
It's a good question. And in the reality, like we've been working for quite some time on a couple of other things. Yeah. We're still a pretty lean team, right? Yeah. So, and our tax credit business is going pretty well. In Folio have been going pretty well. So it's like, if you think about it, we're running a transaction business and starting a software company, an AI software company that is like growing a lot, have required with a lot of like industry knowledge, so like developing 200 document exposures and all of this. So then you also don't have that much time to also do debt advisory. We've worked on a few pref equity deals and not very actively, but sometimes some of our IPPs that sell credits are looking for projects, and some of our developers that are deciding to sell the credits of the project. And then sometimes we match them. So you could think like naturally we would expand into other like capital solutions, but we're a 7-people team based out of New York. 3 are engineers. Is like you can also guess how much, even if Folio makes us super efficient in how we run deals, there's so much time that we can spend doing other things. But the goal is to keep growing now, bring more team members, and start like exploring other financial products that would be layered on top of Folio, and just keep building Folio, which is being super exciting how it's been.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. Obviously, the Solar Maverick podcast is about solar and entrepreneurship. You're a Maverick, and you've actually been a part of 2 different businesses before. You worked at McKinsey, then now obviously Concentro, now Folio. Like, what advice would you have for, I guess, clean energy entrepreneurs or people who want to start a business? What have you learned over the past several years?
Honestly, the first thing that came to my mind is it's painful.
How do you manage your emotion?
Yeah, I would say
through the ups and downs.
I would say buckle up. Yeah. Buckle up, because like sometimes it's like it feels rosier than it is, but then it's very rewarding. And I think especially if you're working in this industry, it has a purpose. You have to see your path. And there's a lot of like feel-good transactions that you close. You help a couple of people that were starting a shop. So we've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, small, ultimately, and And I think I would encourage everyone, but I would also say just be ready for the journey, because like sometimes like being your own boss or like starting a business sounds like pretty nice from the outside, but like it's an absolute roller coaster. It requires a lot of hours, a lot of weekends, a lot of sacrifice, but ultimately it's worth it, right? Like if people are ready, if people have the right problems to solve or the right ideas, I would strongly encourage everyone. And also, I think lastly, I would say look for help. In terms of like, I think it's an industry where everyone's swimming in the same direction, and we even collaborated with some competitors and have a great relationship with them. And it's just like we all have the same goals. So like, I mean, Benoy has been someone that has been super helpful, made introductions, invited us to the podcast, and hopefully we'll all return some of that in different ways. But I think it's an industry where people are willing to be helpful. So I would just say like, also leverage the network, go to events, meet people. Those people will be helpful. The people that they will choose you will be helpful as well. So maybe that's a more positive piece of advice than just buckle up.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. At the end of the day, it's patience, as you mentioned, finding opportunities, building a network, because the network is really what takes things to a different level. Is there anything about Folio that we haven't spoke about, or Concentro?
I mean, probably it's difficult to explain a software solution verbally.
Yeah.
Well, so it's like, it's much easier to like show that.
Oh, for sure.
So probably like a lot of the things of how it works that like maybe people at home or at the office, wherever you're listening to this, are thinking like, what does it mean to process a document via AI? And it's just like, you have this supercharged PDF viewer where you have on the left-hand side the document, on the right-hand side the key extracted information, that it also indexed. So if you hover over a capacity that you used before, then it will bring you where capacity is in the document. So there's a lot of things that probably are better shown than told, but I think we've probably covered a lot of ground, and maybe people are bored at this point from what I'm saying. So I think it's probably, I think with our almost everything about, I mean, if you want to learn a bit more about Concentro, there's a great podcast, not because of us, but because of Benoy, with my co-founder Tao, as from a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think as always, you've done a great job as a host.
Yeah, well, you guys do a great job of you could hear from talking to you, like your excitement about what you're doing at Concentro and Folio, and obviously your passion for clean energy and entrepreneurship. And, we'll obviously have like the notes of that interview, because I still think like that's a great interview. And then as well, like people could reach out to you or the team to basically set up a demo, which we'll have on the notes of the podcast. The other thing I was going to ask you was, do you think that right now is the easiest time to be an entrepreneur? Because of with AI, with now you might not necessarily need like a technical co-founder like before, with like vibe coding, even the capital required, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what everyone says, like it's the best time to start a company is right now. Time will tell, because like the other thing is like now it's a bit more difficult, like thinking a traditional software or AI software now company, it's a little bit more difficult to build a moat.
Yeah.
The ground is moving so fast that you might be obsolete within the week after the business.
Look at ChatGPT and then Anthropic.
And then so it's like it's just like everything moves so fast. And and without going back to Folio, but like for us, it's like we're trying to ride the wave versus fight it. So it's just like we're using all of the best tools out there. So we sometimes use the example of like we're building the chassis or the car, and we can always switch the engine.
Yeah.
So that means like we're never going to be obsolete, and we're just building everything around it to make sure it's tailored to our use case. But still, like I think the counterfactual to like being the best time is like it's difficult to build a defensible model, but at the same time, that means it's so easy to start a company. So you have a good problem to solve that you need a technical founder, like you can do it yourself, or at least test the MVP and then iterate and then bring a technical founder and everything. Capital's there. You can be so much leaner. I mean, I said we were 3 people in the team. We're 7 people, and we're starting a software company, running a transaction business, and we raised very little capital. So it's like, it's the best time to be efficient and do all of that. So I would encourage everything. So that's traditional software business. Now, if I'm thinking clean energy business, well, it is true, we have a lot of regulation headwinds, that there's so much energy.
Oh, that was the part that I was going back
And
to.
there's so many tools out there that we just talked about to like just be more efficient as a company, especially Folio. And I'm joking, but it's just like we need so many megawatts out there, and in one shape or form, maybe it's with the ITC, maybe it's without the ITC, but like the projects will be needed, it will be paid for with subsidies, with higher PPAs, and or with something else. So I think it's a great time to start a company, except maybe like capital markets are a little bit more uncertain. But I think just overall to start a business is one of the best times in history, I would say.
Yeah, and then also like this was just kind of going back to the analogy that you mentioned about the tides going upstream, right? Like there's the energy transition's really just beginning. And especially when you talk about solar and storage, which is a technology, not a fuel. It's the cheapest form of electricity, the fastest to come online. And it's just really beginning in the energy transition. So even with energy and AI, what you're trying to do is pretty like, right now it's a pretty major inflection point. And that there's just so much opportunity.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think it's just like, you can thinking about how you want it, like, I mean, we're a tax credit, like Mr. as a tax credit business, and you can get nervous about what's happening out there. But at the end of the day, is there's so much energy or so much power coming into the grid, and that has to be financed one way or the other. So I think it's just like there's a lot of opportunities coming. And if something as an entrepreneur ourselves, or like as people are listening and thinking about this, change is good. Like, I mean, we entered the market because there was a massive tide change. I said in the beginning of the podcast, when I said in Spain, they changed how the regulation worked, and that created a whole host of opportunities.
Yeah.
Like actually, change is good, and smaller companies are more nimble and faster to adapt
that's
than
true.
the larger ones. So like I think that will just breed more and more opportunities.
Yeah, then with AI, right, that basically helps the playing field, right?
Yep.
Because you don't need as many people to compete, which is huge, right, compared to the established, and you're more nimble with things changing quicker, right? That could be the moat, right? That the smart people who know how to use and create value for their customers and adjust. This makes me think of when I first met you when we first started Concentro. Like the IRA was passed, right, by that time.
Yeah.
But there was not all the rules. Like it was still kind of, you couldn't really sell anything.
Yeah. We basically raised this very small pre-seed because we didn't know what was happening. And because we're targeting DG, it was like, look, if there's no passive active limitation rules, not sure if everyone in the audience will know what this means, but it's basically can individuals use their active income taxes?
Oh, we talked about this.
Buy
Yes.
credits. And we
That was a
thought
huge
was going to be the case. It was unclear, and then that would have changed the model. Who bears recapture? So recapture had been on the seller, then credits would have traded at like 98 cents on the dollar, and then you don't need all this compliance because ultimately, who cares? Like, not who cares, but like you're the buyer. I mean, you're getting a discount, you don't bear any risk.
Yeah.
And that would have changed the type of company. Like maybe one would be a super liquid marketplace that like you don't care too much about compliance, and like then we became more of a hands-on broker because like all this qualification work was needed, and all those things changed, and there was guidance we didn't know, and like we started the company in late 2022 investigating, and we didn't get final guidance until late 2023. So we spent the year building relationships and doing things until we could fully transact. And I think this just creating opportunities, and yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm curious about this. We talked about transferability so much before, meaning in our conversations. Are you guys doing more traditional tax equity, or are you doing more transferability, meaning traditional tax equity and like partnership flip, inverted lease, or sale lease back? Or are you actually doing like transactions related to transferability?
So almost all our activities transferability, right?
Okay.
And it's almost like, as I said, smaller team. We try to stick to our lane, but within that scope of like other financial products that we're helping our clients with, we have some pref equity partners that can provide the capital. We have some people looking for the appreciation, and we also have a few tax equity investors, right? So we are working on a few of those transactions, and something that we expect to increase activity on. But for the time being, most of our activity is on the Concentro side of the business is transferability, not traditional tax equity.
That's interesting too, because if you think about it, the IRA created like liquidity in the market with transferability. You're able to take advantage of that opportunity, right? Because your primary client is the buyers, right? Or sellers, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
try to stay neutral, and we bring both parties to the table. We in general work more with sellers, and also now because we have Folio, and because we are working on a few other financial products, but we have a lot of buyer clients as well. And sometimes we also partner with people, with CPA firms we've worked with some of the banks. But yeah, we work both sides, and that helps us understand how investors think. It helps us understand how developers think, how you will stay neutral, and then actually you can help advise both parties better when you understand who's on the other side of the table better. And I think that's ultimately also topic of the podcast is help us craft what Folio is today better. And because you can use Folio as the one on the sell side, or the party being financed, or you can be the party financing.
Oh, for sure.
It's like you can think it from both angles, and I think that will make it a more useful and modular platform.
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna say that, and then you said it like on cue, which was great. That obviously you created a better product, and then things will be constantly changing, and you've been on all sides of the table, so you can create a better product. Well, this has been an amazing interview, Inigo. I appreciate you making the time. If our audience wants to learn more about Concentro or Folio, or get a demo with Folio, or connect with you, like what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Benoy, for hosting us again. It's always great, and we look forward to keeping this relationship. But answering the question, I think for people that want to learn more about Folio, please go to getfolio.io, and there you can see some of the show that I couldn't do here with some visuals around like how the platform works. And you can request a demo from there, or actually directly book a demo, or just leave a web form and hopefully also mention Solar Maverick to know that you guys are coming from this. Alternatively, you can reach me at Inigo, INIGO, at getfolio.io for Folio. And for people interested in Concentro, you can go to concentro.io, or you can also end up in Folio if you want to, or reach me at Inigo and concentro.io, I think. Or of course, you can find me on LinkedIn and just shoot me a message, and maybe that's the simplest way.
Yeah, well, we'll have all this in the notes, and I appreciate this was actually a great interview. I always learn so much when, I speak to you, so I appreciate you sharing your expertise and your story too, and your advice as well. And I'm excited about the Folio product. I think there's a real need in the market, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen within the next few years. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Benoy. Maybe there will be a third version 2 years from now. I'm joking. But no, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it all the way here. And yeah, Benoy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. I appreciate it, Inigo.